artificial, system online.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is a special insight segment, and today we're building it on the framework of surviving AI with Carlo Thompson.
That's right.
And we are really getting straight to the point. We're tackling a reality that demands, I think, immediate action.
It absolutely does.
It's this unsettling and, frankly, disproportionate impact of the AI employment revolution, specifically on working women.
And I think it's important to clarify our mission right out of the gate. For those of you who followed the Surviving AI curriculum, you know the core premise. The AI revolution, it's not some far-off event. It's here. It is actively rewriting job descriptions as we speak. And, you know, the data proves its impact is, well, it's not uniform. It's not gradual.
Right. So this is a survival guide for right now.
Exactly. Yeah. No fear-mongering, no hype. We're just focused on actionable, evidence-based data with, very specific timelines. We're often looking at that 2027 to 2030 window.
So the goal for you listening is to have a concrete 24 to 36 month action plan by the end of this. And to do that, we have to unpack this central, deeply unsettling paradox right away.
Yes.
Because when people first think about automation, they usually picture, robots on a factory floor.
Physical jobs.
Exactly. But if you look at the raw data on generative AI, the kind we're all interacting with every day now, the central finding is that women face a higher and, I think crucially, a more immediate risk of job degradation and displacement.
More immediate is the key phrase. This dissonance, this, gap between what we perceive and what's actually happening, that's the most dangerous part of this revolution.
How so?
Well, if you assume you're safe because you work in an office and not on an assembly line, the data suggests you are fundamentally miscalculating your exposure. We have to understand why this is happening in white-collar jobs right now, because that understanding is what dictates your next career move.
Okay, so before we drill down into the gender-specific data, let's just, establish the broader terrain. The sources we've looked at show this really split market sentiment. It's like half fear, half optimism.
It's a fascinating psychological split. On the fear side of things, a big 2023 Forbes Advisor survey captured this mass anxiety. It reported that 77% of respondents were concerned about job loss in the next 12 months.
77%, that's huge.
It is, and nearly half of those, 44%, were very concerned. And look, that level of anxiety is completely rational. You see a tool like ChatGPT, and you immediately grasp what it means for routine work.
That anxiety is like a tidal wave being fueled by headlines. But here's where it gets really interesting to me. That concern about the market as a whole is so different from what people think about their own jobs. A separate survey, this one from Jitterbit, showed a massive 85% of office workers believe AI will mostly enhance their current roles.
Not replace them.
Not replace them.
Think about that contradiction. It's profound. Most people believe, yes, AI will be bad for the economy, but at the same time, my specific job will be improved by it.
It's a kind of professional self-deception.
It is. We think we're the exception to the rule. We overestimate how unique our daily tasks are, and we drastically underestimate what the technology is capable of.
It's the "it won't happen to me" syndrome, but for your career. So we need to ground this feeling in some concrete projections. What does the evidence actually say about the scale of this disruption?
The scale is immense, and these figures aren't just from think tanks. They're from investment banks' global economic bodies. Goldman Sachs, for example, estimated that 300 million jobs across the U.S. and Europe could be lost or degraded.
300 million.
300 million. Just to give that some context, that's over 9% of all jobs worldwide. When a major financial institution like Goldman Sachs puts out a number that big, it's not just speculation anymore. It becomes strategic economic planning.
And if we focus just on the U.S. timeline, because that's where a lot of our sources are focused, the change is happening on two tracks at once, right?
Right, it's bifurcated. By 2030, current projections suggest that 30% of U.S. jobs could face full automation.
Full replacement.
Complete replacement of the worker by an algorithm or a machine. But the more common, and I would argue more dangerous track, is augmentation.
Okay, what's augmentation?
A crucial 60% of U.S. jobs will see significant task-level changes because of AI. This is what we really need to focus on. It's modification, not just replacement. For most professionals, your role won't just vanish. It's going to fundamentally shift right under your feet.
Let's unpack that a bit. What does a task level change actually look like in, say, a normal white-collar job?
Okay, so imagine a mid-level manager. They probably spend, 40% of their time synthesizing reports, writing first drafts of emails, scheduling meetings.
Standard stuff.
Standard stuff. Generative AI can do 90% of those repetitive tasks in minutes. The change isn't that the manager gets fired, it's that 40% of their week is now freed up.
So what happens to that time?
Well, that's the question. If they don't pivot that new time into higher value activities, strategy, emotional leadership, complex decision-making, then the company looks at the org chart and realizes they don't need a full-time manager anymore. They hire one person to do the high-value work that 2 or 3 people used to do.
So the job description changes.
Yeah.
And if you don't change with it,
You're functionally degraded or eventually eliminated.
that reframes the entire survival strategy then.
Yeah.
It's not about fighting AI. It's about claiming the new work that AI creates.
Precisely. The World Economic Forum tries to find that balance point. They call it automation and augmentation. They forecast that while 85 million jobs might be replaced globally, 97 million new jobs are likely to be created by this revolution. So in terms of sheer numbers, the net outlook might actually be positive. More jobs created than lost.
Okay, wait. That sounds, on the surface, pretty optimistic. But if I'm, say, an accountant in one of those 85 million lost jobs, I can't just become an AI prompt engineer overnight.
That is the critical insight. You can't. The new jobs being created require entirely different skills. Data literacy, prompt engineering, critical thinking, ethical judgment, they are not the same roles. This whole process is inherently disruptive, and it puts the burden of adaptation squarely on you, the worker.
Which brings us to the key survival metric for the immediate future. If the job market is shifting this fast, adaptation isn't just a good idea, it's mandatory.
The data is crystal clear on this. 83% of companies say that employees who can demonstrate AI skills will have greater job security than those who don't.
It really is a binary choice then.
It's the binary choice at the heart of our curriculum philosophy. You're either adapting and augmenting your skills, or you are choosing to become obsolete. AI literacy isn't a bonus on your resume anymore. It is essential protection.
And if you're in one of those high exposure roles, ignoring these tools is it's like choosing to use a slide rule when everyone else has a calculator.
Exactly. The competitive gap becomes insurmountable almost instantly.
And if the average employee is facing up to a 60% task change in the next few years, you really have to start mastering these tools today.
And that's where we transition. From this general landscape to the very specific data on gender vulnerability, this is where we put hard numbers on the immediate risk-facing working women.
And the disparity is, it's alarming. We're moving beyond general risk to really specific quantitative data. Let's start with the International Labor Organization, the ILO study. What did they find on this exposure gap?
The ILO found that women are nearly 3 times more likely than men to work in jobs with high exposure to AI automation.
3 times.
3 times. That factor is a flashing red light for anyone in white-collar administration. This massive gap exists because generative AI excels at precisely the tasks that form the backbone of these traditionally female-heavy office roles.
Okay, let's translate that into actual numbers for the U.S. workforce. This is based on analysis from the Keenan Institute of Private Enterprise. It's 8 out of every 10 women.
8 out of 10.
That's 79%. We're about 58.87 million women who are right now in jobs classified as highly exposed to generative AI automation.
And now compare that to men. For men, it's only 6 out of 10. That's 58%, or about 48.62 million.
So there are 21% more women than men in that immediate high-risk danger zone.
Exactly. And when you zoom in on the most severe end of that risk, the highest risk categories in high-income nations, the gap is even more stark. 9.6% of women's jobs fall into that highest, most vulnerable category, versus only about 3.2 to 3.5% for men.
I want to just pause on that 9.6% figure. It sounds small, maybe, but if you translate it into human terms, it means for every 10 women, one of them is facing a near-term career displacement crisis.
It's an economic emergency.
So why? Why this massive concentration? You mentioned white-collar risk, and the sources all point to this idea of occupational segregation.
That concentration is the absolute core of the problem. Historically, and this is still true today, women make up about 70% of the white-collar workforce. They hold the majority of jobs in administrative support, data processing, communications, junior-level finance, HR roles.
While men are more evenly distributed across different sectors.
Right. Men are more spread out across those sectors and the blue-collar physical labor sectors that we'll talk about in a minute.
So if women are the majority in the office, and this new disruptive technology, generative AI, is basically a super sophisticated word and data processor.
Then the target is defined by the technology's own capabilities.
Exactly. Gen AI doesn't need to lift heavy things. It doesn't navigate a factory floor. It excels at digitized tasks, processing structured data, drafting emails, summarizing documents, screening candidates, writing content.
All the repetitive rule-based tasks that form the foundation of white-collar support. And these are the tasks where Gen AI offers immediate, massive, quantifiable efficiency gains. If your employer can buy a $20 a month subscription that automates 80% of a $50,000 a year salary,
They're going to do it.
they will do it. That's the economic reality driving this immediate exposure.
Okay, let's get really specific now. If you're listening and you're in one of these areas, what does the data say about your near-term automation risk? We need the specifics for that 24 to 36-month plan.
All right, first up, clerical and administrative roles. This is, without a doubt, the single highest exposure category. Roles like manual data entry clerks, they face a staggering 95% risk of automation.
97%.
The ILO report explicitly called out jobs like typists, bookkeepers, data entry staff as being among the very first to go. AI systems can just process information orders of magnitude faster and with greater accuracy.
Wow. 95% is basically a death sentence for that job function. That's not augmentation anymore. That's outright replacement.
Yeah.
What's next on the list?
Next is financial support. The whole financial services industry is built on data and rules, so it's a prime target. Projections show that 70% of basic banking operations are going to be automated in the coming years.
And that's all driven by cost savings, I assume.
Billions in operational costs. And look at loan processing specifically. That's expected to hit 80% automation by 2030. That's up from only around 35% today. We are already seeing the big Wall Street banks announce workforce reductions, and they are specifically citing AI efficiency.
That jump from 35 to 80% in just 6 years that's a lightning-fast disruption. So it's not that the loan officer vanishes, but their job shifts from processing forms to just troubleshooting the really complex cases the AI can't handle.
And you just need fewer of those people. Precisely. The third major area is human resources support. Much of the HR pipeline, from recruitment to benefits, it's standardized, it's rule-based.
Right. Lots of data.
So the automation risk here is immediate. We're talking between 2025 and 2027. Predictions are that 85% of recruitment screening will be automated, and 90% of benefits administration is at similar risk. The jobs that involve reading resumes for keywords or processing enrollment forms are being systematically replaced by algorithms.
It's the sheer volume of standardized, document-heavy tasks that makes HR so vulnerable.
Okay. What about roles we used to think were safe? You know, the creative fields. Creative and media. That was supposed to be the human firewall.
That firewall is dissolving, and it's dissolving fast thanks to Gen AI's content capabilities. The media industry is being reshaped in real time. Just look at digital marketing. Jobs for content writers are projected to decline by 50% by 2030.
50%.
Reporter and writer positions, they're expected to shrink by 30% in the same period. Even visual arts and entertainment are affected. Goldman Sachs estimates Gen AI could automate about 26% of tasks in arts, media, and entertainment. This makes sense of why you see organizations like the Screen Actors Guilds taking such a strong stance, even striking over generative AI replacing human roles.
Absolutely. If an AI can generate a high-quality first draft of copy or code or an image, the demand for entry and mid-level human creators just shrinks dramatically. It makes the competition for the high-level strategic creative jobs incredibly fierce.
The conclusion here is pretty stark. The immediate acute impact of the AI revolution is hitting offices, data centers, and admin departments first. And that is where women hold the majority of roles, that 9.6% risk figure. It's not just a statistic. It represents millions of careers that need an immediate course correction.
Okay, so we've established the immediate risk of women in those white-collar roles. To get the full picture, though, we have to look at the other side of this. The historically male-dominated blue-collar sectors. What's their timeline? What does their displacement look like? It's a very different picture. While women face that immediate high generative AI exposure in digital roles, Men are facing a different, but, equally formidable challenge. It's a medium to long-term structural displacement.
What do you mean by structural?
It's automation that relies on physical machinery.
Yeah.
Robotics. And that just fundamentally takes longer and is more expensive to deploy than updating software in an office. This difference in implementation time is why the risk profiles are so different.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, installing a warehouse full of autonomous robots is a multi-million-dollar capital investment.
Right.
Integrating an LLM into your customer service desk is a fraction of that cost. So let's look at the key blue-collar sectors.
First, manufacturing. This industry has already been automating for decades. We've lost 1.7 million U.S. manufacturing jobs since 2000. But the next wave, which is fueled by smarter AI and better robotics, is set to eliminate another 2 million jobs by 2030.
2 million more.
And the forecast is dramatic. More than half of all assembly line, packaging, and quality control positions might be automated. Some sources show assembly line jobs dropping from over 2 million to just 1 million.
And the overall risk profile reflects that physical threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Manufacturing and construction face a 53% chance of jobs being fully automated. That's much higher than the thumb 4% average across all sectors.
It is. And this involves robots moving from simple, repetitive actions to complex, unsupervised tasks. They're using sophisticated edge computing to make decisions.
What's edge computing?
It just means the robots have enough intelligence on board to make decisions locally, right there on the factory floor, without needing to check in with a central server for every single movement. And when robots get that autonomous, the need for human supervision on the line just plummets.
Okay, the second massive sector is logistics and transportation. This is the classic example of an impending automation cliff.
Oh, absolutely. The U.S. trucking industry supports millions of professional driving jobs, and they are squarely in the crosshairs. Conservative projections suggest the industry could lose 1.5 million positions by 2030 because of autonomous vehicles.
1.5 million.
And while there are still regulatory hurdles, the market shift is, I think, inevitable. The economics are just too compelling. Autonomous fleets are projected to reduce operating costs per mile by 38% and slash road safety incidents by 50%. The economic incentive for companies to adopt this is just overwhelming.
So men are facing this threat of structural physical replacement in the medium term, while women face the threat of immediate digital replacement. But here's where we get to the most fascinating counter-narrative of this whole deep dive.
Yes.
The blue-collar inversion. This idea of the rising status and demand for skilled blue-collar work that AI and robots can't easily do yet.
This inversion is the pathway to stability, really for workers in all demographics. The tasks that are proving to be automation-proof are the ones that require complex problem-solving, intricate physical dexterity, and high judgment work in unpredictable environments.
Like what?
Like diagnosing a complex HVAC issue or running specialized wiring through an existing building. Things that aren't repetitive.
And this demand has had a real, measurable financial impact. You can see it in the wages. Wages for construction roles are up 23.5% over pre-COVID levels. Manufacturing wages are up over 20%.
And these aren't just temporary bumps. They reflect a persistent, fundamental demand for skilled manual labor.
And we're seeing a huge cultural and educational shift because of this. Reports are showing that 40% of young university graduates in 2025 are actively choosing careers in things like plumbing, construction, electrical work.
They're bypassing these saturated, vulnerable, white-collar fields because they've looked at the data. They've realized that long-term stability and high earning potential lies in these essential physical trades.
That is a monumental shift in perception. The old idea that college equals a guaranteed successful career is being replaced by skilled trades equals automation resistance.
It is. The stigma around blue-collar work is just rapidly eroding. The American Association of Community Colleges found that 70% of white-collar workers agree that blue-collar jobs are respected more now than they were 10 years ago.
And the value proposition of a trade tangible results, high hourly wage, resilience to software disruption is making it really attractive.
Especially to younger workers who've seen how volatile digital industries can be.
So the male workforce faces a threat in routine physical labor, but there's a clear pathway to safety in skilled trades. It's established, it's highly paid, it's resilient.
Right.
For women, the threat is immediate, it's digital, and it's concentrated in these roles defined by digitized tasks. Which brings us to the next section, which is all about why adaptation seems to be so much harder for women, even when they know the risk.
We have to tackle this compounding problem now. It's not just that women are in more vulnerable jobs. It's that a confluence of societal, psychological, and systemic factors is actually inhibiting their ability to adopt the tools they need to transition to safety. We're facing an adoption gap, a trust gap, and inherent algorithmic bias.
Let's start with the hard numbers on usage. The AI adoption gap. If AI literacy is the new job security, where do the demographics actually stand?
The research from Harvard Business School found a really worrying trend. Women are adopting AI tools in the workplace at a 25% lower rate than men, on average.
25%. That's not trivial. That is a massive drag on professional progression.
It creates this huge compounding disadvantage. If your male colleague starts using Gen AI to automate 30% of his tasks today, and you wait 6 months because you're reluctant or apprehensive, he has already banked 6 months of productivity gains, skill mastery, and enhanced output that you haven't.
The gap just widens exponentially.
It does, and this is confirmed across different age groups. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York reported that half of men used generative AI in the last 12 months, compared to only about a third of women.
And the disparity is strongest, and this is probably the most alarming part, among the youngest workers, the people who should be the most digitally native.
Exactly. The Oliver Wyman Forum found that 71% of men ages 18 to 24 use Gen AI weekly, compared to just 59% of women in that same group.
So the foundations of AI literacy are being built unequally right at the start of careers. Why? What's the reluctance about? Is it technical skill or something deeper? This must lead to the trust and ethical concern gap.
It's overwhelmingly psychological and cultural. HBS research points to women expressing a significant fear of being judged harshly for relying on AI. They worry that using it will be seen as cheating. Or worse, as evidence of a lack of their own expertise, which could lead to career penalties or a loss of respect.
That's a terrible friction point. And it's so ironic. Women are concentrated in the jobs most threatened by Gen AI, yet the culture of the workplace is stopping them from using the very tools that could save them.
It's the cost of being perceived as competent. Men, on the other hand, appear more confident about just incorporating the tech, sometimes even overconfident, and they claim the productivity benefits without that same internalized fear.
And this cultural pressure, it translates into lower trust in the technology itself.
It does. The Deloitte Connected Consumer Survey found women express significantly lower trust in Gen AI providers to keep their data secure. Only 18% of female adopters report high trust.
And for men?
31%. This trust deficit creates a huge barrier to the deep, regular use of AI in daily workflows. If you don't trust the platform, you're not going to upload your most sensitive professional data or rely on it for complex work. You just can't get the full productivity boost.
And this issue is compounded by the perception gap in leadership. If the technology is adopted unequally, how are the decision makers viewing the people who do use it?
This is a subtle but very potent barrier. A Capgemini report revealed that nearly half of male leaders still label AI and innovation skills as masculine.
Masculine, wow.
This subconscious gendering of technical skill just reinforces old hierarchies. It subtly suggests women are better suited for soft skills, like management or nurturing, rather than mastering technical innovation.
And when AI competency is viewed through that masculine lens, it automatically holds women back from progressing into high-level AI-dependent leadership roles, even if they have the skills.
Which brings us to the root of the whole system. Who is building this technology in the first place? Women are severely underrepresented in the AI workforce, only about 22% globally.
So if the creators lack diversity, the algorithms will inevitably reflect the biases in the data they're trained on.
Which leads directly to our next critical point, algorithmic bias in hiring.
We really need to slow down and unpack this one, because this isn't about human bias anymore. It's about machine bias, which operates at a massive scale. Let's define the tech. We're talking about an LLM, a large language model, the tech behind tools like ChatGPT. The sources had a fascinating study using GPT 3.5.
Yes, researchers ran an experiment where they told GPT 3.5 to score about 361,000 randomized entry-level resumes. The crucial part was that the resumes had randomly assigned names that signaled gender and race, but all the actual qualifications, skills, experience, education, everything was identical.
So the only variable was the perceived identity of the applicant.
The only variable.
What did the LLM's automated scoring system find?
The findings showed a really complex, multi-layered bias. Overall, the LMAT actually showed what you might call a pro-female bias in that initial screening. Both black and white female candidates got significantly higher scores than otherwise identical white males.
Interesting. So, for example,
Using an 80-point hiring cutoff, black females had a 1.7 percentage point greater probability of being hired, and white females had a 1.4 percentage point greater probability than white males.
so the LLM may have internalized some feedback loops that actually mitigate some traditional human gender bias.
It's possible. It suggests that, in some ways, it could be a benefit for women in the initial stages of job applications. But you mentioned a two-sided bias. What about other groups?
Right. Here's the other side. The very same model showed a concerning, measurable anti-black male bias. Black male candidates received significantly lower scores than white male candidates with identical perfect qualifications.
And that resulted in a 1.4 percentage point lower probability of being hired at that same 80-point cutoff compared to their white male peers.
That is a staggering finding. The machine, trained on human language and data, essentially replicated or even amplified a societal bias against one specific demographic while elevating another. It shows that algorithmic fairness is not a given.
Not at all. It's a direct reflection of the biases in the training data, and it can vary wildly across different dimensions of social identity.
And there was another layer to this, right? Something about political influence.
Yes, and this is perhaps the most nuanced and unsettling detail from the research. The bias against black male candidates was measurably greater in states classified as Republican, like Florida, Georgia, and Texas, compared to Democratic states like California and New York.
Wait, are you saying the geographic and political context of the job application, which was simulated, somehow influenced the bias that was encoded in the LLM?
It suggests that the training data, the huge amount of text the LLM learned from, contains subconscious encoding of regional or political social norms that influence hiring perception.
It highlights a fundamental truth, then. AI is not some neutral arbiter of facts.
It's a mirror. It's a mirror that magnifies both the positive and negative patterns in our society, and it does it in a way that is scaled and automated.
The implication for you listening is massive. Whether you're worried about being replaced by AI or applying for a new job screened by AI, the technology itself is not objective. You have to understand that these tools are already preloaded with complex biases, which makes developing a strategy to future-proof your career even more urgent.
So, given this complex, data-driven landscape, the immediate white-collar risk, the adoption and trust gaps, the biased algorithms, we have to pivot now to the actionable frameworks. The next 24 to 36 months are the critical window to adapt and secure your place in this new, augmented economy.
The core philosophy here, based on all the sources, is to shift away from tasks that are easily automated and toward skills that are inherently human. Let's talk about those essential human skills that AI can't replicate.
We call these durable skills because they are resilient to every technological disruption. They're the abilities that allow you to work with AI, not compete against it. These are things like leadership, emotional intelligence, empathy, active listening, nuanced communication.
AI can draft an email.
It cannot deliver difficult feedback with empathy.
And these skills, they're not soft or fluffy. They are the bedrock of the future economy. Communication, leadership, critical thinking, they appear in something like 15 million U.S. job postings every year. These are the skills employers always say are the most difficult to find and the most important for success.
And by 2030, skills like creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, agility, they're all expected to rise sharply in importance. Even though 60% of jobs will see big task changes, a remarkable 66% of all tasks in 2030 will still require human skills or a human-technology combination.
So that tells you exactly where to invest your learning resources.
In complex human interaction and high-judgment decision-making.
Augmentation means you shed the data entry tasks to the machine, and you devote that saved time to strategy, creativity, and these human-centric roles. Okay, let's identify the specific sectors where growth is strong and the risk is low.
Healthcare is number one, primarily because the essential job function relies on human connection and care. AI has automated administrative tasks, like medical transcription is now almost 99% automated, but the patient-facing, care-intensive roles are booming.
For example,
about nurse practitioners. They are projected to grow by an astounding 52% from 2023 to 2033.
And it's not just the highly skilled roles, right? General patient services, mental health counselors, personal services. They're also expected to add 500,000 positions by 2033. These are jobs that rely on physical presence, trust, emotional labor that AI just cannot replicate.
Second, we return to the skilled trades. As we talked about in the blue-collar inversion, these jobs with complex physical dexterity in unpredictable settings are among the least threatened. The renewable energy sector is a perfect example.
Wind turbine technicians.
50% growth projected by 2034. Solar photovoltaic installers, 22% growth. These are highly paid, essential roles that require on-site judgment.
And finally, the new AI economy roles. If you're building the future, your job is safe and highly valued. The demand for AI engineers has seen a staggering 143.2% increase in its growth rate.
But the opportunity isn't just for the engineers, it's for these specialized roles that combine technical and durable skills. Prompt engineers who master communicating with LLMs, AI ethicists who review algorithms for the exact biases we just talked about,
Right.
AI compliance managers. Workers with specialized AI skills earn, on average, 25% higher wages than those without. This is the new premium on professional expertise.
This brings us to the critical takeaway for you, the learner. As you structure your 24 to 36-month action plan, it's really a two-part approach.
You have to focus on roles that combine technical skill with high human judgment. Technical skill means data literacy, understanding how data flows, how AI uses it, how to structure information. That's being called the new workplace currency.
And AI literacy.
You have to master AI literacy, learning how to use Gen AI as your indispensable assistant to reduce your workload in those high-exposure digitized tasks.
But those technical skills they're meaningless without high human judgment. Critical thinking, resilience, flexibility, ethical reasoning.
AI augments knowledge jobs by providing massive computational power, but it cannot yet perform complex decision-making, ethical stewardship, or emotional leadership.
So by strategically combining the technical ability to use AI as an assistant with the durable human skills of judgment and emotional intelligence,
you create an augmented, durable career path that is resistant to both the immediate white-collar disruption and the medium-term structural displacement.
we've synthesized a huge amount of source material today, but the core lesson for working women is, I think, crystal clear. Understand that the timeline of this disruption is essential for your career success. Your risk is immediate, and it's concentrated in these digitized white-collar roles like administration, finance, and HR.
And this immediate risk is dangerously complicated by those persistent adoption and trust gaps. If you are in a vulnerable role, you absolutely cannot afford to let cultural anxieties about being perceived as cheating stop you from mastering the tools that will enhance, augment, and ultimately protect your job.
The time for passive consumption of technology is over.
The time for active mastery is now.
This deep dive into the source material shows that the automation revolution isn't just an economic force. It is a profound social challenge that threatens to mirror and magnify existing inequalities through structural segregation and algorithmic bias. And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to consider as you build your action plan.
If AI algorithms, like that GPT 3.5 model we discussed, show measurable, quantifiable biases like the anti-black male bias, despite the overall pro-female trend, who should be responsible for writing the mandatory gender impact forecast before AI is deployed across entire industries?
That forecast would be an essential preemptive tool. It would map the task-level exposure and potential biases for female versus male workers and set mitigation targets before mass job loss or bias-driven hiring exclusion happens.
We have to ensure that women are not just passive users of AI, always trying to close that adoption gap, but that they are active co-creators, ethical stewards, and powerful decision-makers in shaping this technology.
The future doesn't happen to us. It is built by us.
The time to start implementing your concrete 24 to 36-month action plan is today.
This special insights segment is part of the broader Surviving AI with Carlo Thompson curriculum, which is dedicated to providing you with these actionable frameworks and evidence-based data. To continue building your customized survival strategy, sign up and enable your notifications so you don't miss the next stage of the deep dive. Prepare for the future. Don't wait for it.
Thanks for listening. Join us next time on Surviving AI.